Okay, we're on. So good evening and welcome to the 15th Works in Progress presentation of the 2020 spring/summer season. This Works in Progress series is a cooperative project of CRRC Georgia, ERISC, and American Councils. And this year we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of this series. Every week during the academic year, we have presentations by local and visiting researchers to present on their projects. As the name Works in Progress implies, the emphasis is on ongoing things, projects that are in the process of being done, and also in a wide variety of fields. In history, political science, musicology, anthropology, virtually anything you can imagine. We've had some even in statistics about fishing in Alaska, a wide variety of subjects, but usually related to the Caucasus, Georgia, this region. Today's presentation is a bit unusual in that we are collaborating today with Ilia State University, and therefore we are broadcasting through a live feed through Ilia State University. And that's the reason we're starting right at 6:30 and not waiting our usual Georgia maybe time for people to sort of struggle in. So we are live, and I would like to give a heads up to the participants in the Zoom meeting that unusually, contrary to our normal procedures, this week we are recording this session, and Ilia State University will have this up later on their website. And the reason that we are doing this collaboration is in order to celebrate and to advertise the new MA program at Ilia State University in Georgian Contemporary History. Our presenter today, Adrian Briscoe, I'll say a few more words of introduction a bit later on, is also a professor at Ilia State University and also one of the participants in this new MA program at Ilia State University, as am I. And today we have with us the founder and coordinator of that, and inspiration of that program, Dr. Becca Kobachidze, also from Ilia State University. And we've asked Becca to say a few words about the program before we get started with today's talk. So I give the word to Becca.
Tim, thank you very much for the introduction. So a couple of words, hello everyone, a couple of words about the new MA program in modern history of Georgia. So this is a very important step, not only for historiography in Georgia, but for the whole country, I believe, because we may be creating and establishing a new school of historiography inside this country. The reason of it, why we are doing that, is that primarily we Georgians and friends of Georgia have many unanswered questions in the history of Georgia. So many topics are understudied, and this needs a new blow. Secondly, history of Georgia and historiography, Georgia historiography, is not properly internationalized. So current Georgian historiography is more or less a heir to the Soviet or post-Soviet historiography, and we need to put it in a new channel on modern, to put it in modern standards and to put it a new blow. It was not easy to create this program because for any enterprise you start, you need human resources. So I believe what we have done is a collection of Georgian national team, including our foreign friends, and I would divide our academic staff into 3 pools. So primarily, those are the big names which we managed to invite enthusiasts from the US universities. Those are co-chair of the MA program, Professor Stephen Jones from Mount Holyoke College, then Professor Ronald Suri, which is one of the most prominent Sovietologists in the world, who come from the University of Michigan, and then Dr. Alex Mikhaberidze, who comes from the Louisiana State University. And then without people like Tim himself, Adrian, and the local staff, we can call them, inside Ilia State University, fabulous people with enormous and in-depth knowledge. And then we also collected a new generation of Georgian historians who graduated from Western universities, from German universities, and from American, etc., etc. And we put all these people together. And I believe that in several years, this program will bring results. Moreover, this program is privileged to be in partnership with the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Foundation, which will award 250 euros monthly scholarship to 3 best students of our program, which is something in Georgia. And I mean, student can really live with 250 euros and concentrate fully on his or her studies. And apart from that, it is committed by the Konrad Adenauer Foundation that every other month we'll have prominent visitor from Western academia, and it will be also fully funded. Apart from that, Dr. Alex Mikaberidze, who is our visiting professor from Louisiana State University, is committed to take every year a single student for research project to the United States, and this is just the beginning. So what I mean to say is that our graduates will successfully, I believe, will successfully continue pursue their careers in Western academia. They'll be able to write peer-reviewed articles and to integrate in modern international historiography. So, and one more very important thing, we don't count on numbers, but we count on qualities. So I will admit probably from 5 to 10, only 5 to 10 students every year, but qualification process will be quite tough. And the language will be bilingual program for the moment, both in Georgian and in English. But for the next years, we'll see. We may go fully international. So this is basic information, and I would ask our listeners, our audience, to spread this news around and to call on potential applicants for their interest. Thank you very much, team.
Thank you, Becca. Okay, so now we can move on to the main event. It's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Adrian Briscu, who is an associate professor at Charles University in Czechia, in the Czech Republic, and also a professor at Ilia State University, and will be one of the faculty involved in the Georgian Master's Program. So without further ado, Adrian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tim, for inviting me today, and thank you everybody for joining in today's lecture and presentation. I would like to just share my screen, and so my it's a bit, all the screens are showing. So my presentation today is going to be divided in two parts. The first part, I'm going to talk a little bit about the sort of the process of leading up to the making of the special edition, special issue, and then the second part, I will jump into introducing a little bit more in detail the argument that the special issue is trying to make in the context of the historiography of the Caucasus at that particular beginning of the 20th century. And then I'm going to introduce just some of the main arguments that each article is putting forward, and then I will conclude, and hopefully we'll have a nice discussion and interesting questions. I would like to also make the point here that since the framework of the series that Tim has been working on is more about the work in progress, the idea that in my presentation was to talk a little bit about this process, because the outcome is already achieved here in this regard, that the special issue came out in March 2020. So I would like to start by saying that this has been a 2-year, relatively speaking, 2-year process from the conference that I organized here at Charles University on the 24th of May 2018 to the publication in Caucasus Survey, as I said, coming out in March 2020. So the starting point for the special issue was the 2018 centenaries of the First Republic in Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. Already in 2017, I got the full position here at Charles University with a sort of the description that I would cover work on the Caucasus. So I was sort of reading and seeing what events were being prepared for the 2018 centenaries, and I sort of noticed that there is nothing on Transcaucasian Democratic Federative Republic. So I thought this would be an opportune time for me as well to sort of establish myself in a better footing here at Charles University, but also more widely also having noticed in my previous research that this particular political phenomenon, the 5 weeks long political experiment, really gets not so much attention. So the next step was to find the funding for the conference. I sort of did a combined thing. I got some funding from my department, from my institute, but also fundraised, which was a first thing for me from some companies here who actually fund activities. So I was able to organize this, and of course the next step was choosing the participants, and that was sometimes I knew quite some people, but then for instance choosing participants who would talk about Azerbaijan became a little bit elusive. I got a couple of people who promised me to come, and then they were all going to the events that were being organized on the First Republic of Azerbaijan, either in Azerbaijan or in Turkey, and so on. So it became a little bit difficult, but finally I managed to have a list of nine participants, the contributions of which are all included in the special issue. Then the other step was to organizing the conference and bringing in Becca and Tim and Sarah and many others. Was to we had the event, and it was a very interesting, and there more questions than I had anticipated propped up. And then also another thing was deciding about the publication outlet, where to publish it, with whom. My initial idea was to to publish it as an edited volume, as a book. But then the discussion there, and I was more moved towards a special issue, and that's how the idea was conceived. And then if I remember correctly, it was Tim who suggested to approach Caucasus Survey. So that was the next step, which was not a very difficult one, of course. We just wrote to the main editor, Lawrence Bowers, and he liked the idea very much. And so the other steps were to decide on the number of articles, which we were quite happy to see that all of the contributions were included. And then there were suggestions by Lawrence to also add an afterword to the whole special issue. And then the question of size, of course, it had to be to fit into their sort of format for publishing. And so we agreed more or less to have it 5,000 words. And then articles were sort of, in terms of other steps, articles were submitted to us as editors, and then we send it in the bulk. There was this issue whether each contributor would submit themselves into the system, but then we submitted them into bulk. So the division of labor in terms of sort of the other ways of how we dealt with this was to deal with content deadlines, language editing, translation from basically Georgian and Russian. So that was also more or less more or less an easy, smooth process, and quite. It was, to me particularly, it was a very enjoyable process. At times also maybe a little bit stressful, but still a very good process. So now I'll move on to the second part of the lecture, which is a little bit more about why, aside from the idea of marking this centenary on the Transcaucasian Democratic Federative Republic as something that we noticed, and I think when we had the conference here, Tim or somebody else mentioned that the Polish Institute in Georgia was organizing something, but correct me if I'm wrong. So there was a little bit of marking, but not in such a sort of international kind of conference setting. So. As I mentioned a little bit briefly, the historiography on the TDFR is rather fragmentary. So they are mentioning. So if you look at the larger historiography on the Caucasus at the sort of the end of the First World War, it's rather, it covers the whole events, particularly the Caucasus as one of the theaters of the war, but there is not so much on particularly focusing on these 5 weeks of TDFR being an independent one, but also more into the sort of federal structures that started to emerge on the Caucasus. And this is so this was one aspect as to why there was this absence, and then also if you look at the sort of the descriptions and the accounts that come from the larger historiography, but also from the historiography of the respective states, for instance, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia, there's this mentioning that it was a Transinian period, and we know the factors more or less are there, the historical factors as to why it fell apart, why it could not, so internal and external pressures and interests, but and also the aspect of that this was a unique one-time event. So you don't get the sense of something more of a systematic study. So it became clear in the conference, but also in sort of reframing and reshaping the special issue, that there was really a need for a more comprehensive, systematic account of what this experiment was about, how it came about, who created it, whose interest it served, and so on. And also for more sort of, since Becca also mentioned this new MA program for contemporary Georgian history, it also became much more clear, since we as a group of people that came for this conference, but with all different kind of perspectives in how to approach history, from my point of view, was also very interesting to have a conceptual history account, so more about the ideas surrounding the notion of federalism, and of course the multi-perspectival account. And here we can also maybe have a discussion in the question answer section was to what is really a Georgian perspective there, what is really an Armenian perspective, because this again, or Azerbaijani perspective or German perspective. So there are points to discuss there. But the point was to have a conceptual, multi-perspectival account of the formation and practice of federation and federalism in the Caucasus, because this is, I think, this is a new thing to analyze and to study. And also at the same time, there was a new generation of scholars and historians, and I think this is one of the richness of this special issue, that, you know, I was sort of in a way drooling about this idea that all this work, all these new, all these contributors have been working on different archives, and when you have, for those who have had the possibility to maybe read the introduction or see who is part of this this project, they have been working on their individual projects, and they have had access to archives in Germany, archives in the United States and Britain, and archives in Georgia and Chechnya and Turkey, and so on and so forth. So this was a really very opportune moment to bring in a little bit more new information as to what has already been, what sources have been used with regards to briefly talking, as I mentioned, on this particular event. And also sort of the events that are tackled in are more or less similar, but there are also some new angles, new actors as well, and also the ideas, so the competing ideas between nationalism, nationality, and the idea of the sort of the key concept idea here being federation or federalism. Confederation is also one aspect as well. So the argument that the special issue is advancing is that certainly the TDFR was a unique phenomenon, and fleeting as well, and contingent on the geopolitics of the region and the First World War, but it also emerged out of existing discussions about federation and federalism that were appealing, and timing here is an issue, but to all interested actors. So this is sort of the main argument that the special issue sort of advances. And now a little bit more to the particular arguments. So and sort of the arguments that each sort of perspective is bringing in on to the special issue. So Mikhail Zolian, who looks at the Armenian perspective, really brings to light a number of points, but what he stresses more is the traumatic experience for the Armenians, the actors of that time and the population at that time, when they were within this framework of the federative structures, of course, war in different fronts, and then disunity. But the interesting point here was that initially the Dashnaks, being the main party there, they were reluctant initially to join it, but then they were also reluctant to leave it. So here we have already some understandings as to what the Armenian perspective, largely speaking, Armenian perspective was on the TDFR. But then the second contribution was from Georgi Mamulia, who looked at the Azerbaijani perspective. And it was also, he highlights, of course, many contexts there. And but the point that he's making is that the Azerbaijani side, so Musavads mostly, were very initially reluctant, but also they're very enthusiastic about the TDFR, and then they sought to preserve it at some point. Of course, there was the events in March, and the the confrontations and their positions that they had vis-a-vis the Ottoman side and so on. But that was the theme there as well. And my own article, where I looked at the sort of sort of Georgian perspective. Again, here I have it in quotation marks, because I look more at the positions of two figures within the Georgian Social Democratic Party, Jordania and Çankeli, who were kind of very important figures there in the making and unmaking of federation. I look at the conceptual preparedness, so the debates and discussions that they had within themselves on the question of nationality, but also the question of a federative framework for Georgian nation, but also for the Caucasus. And the point was there that the Georgian side and the Georgian Social Democrats, being as the most powerful party there, they were key in the making of the TDFR and in its unmaking. Now the fourth contribution was by Stefan Notalia, who is an Ottomanist, and he looked at the Ottoman perspective on the TDFR, and he also highlights this ambivalence of the Ottomans supporting it. And we know also from previous or existing literature on this that they were the ones to push the Sejm of Sejm to declare independence in their negotiations with the Ottomans. But he highlights these aspects of pragmatism and expedient reasons why they did so in the context of the war, and in their visions as to what to do with the region and so on and so forth. So that was also part of his elaboration in the article. Now, Lasha Bakradze looked at the Committee of Georgia's independence, and how that committee in a way influenced or had some impact on the German position, imperial German position on the TDFR. And also on the positions of Turkey and Moscow, and how they try to, in a way, sort of undermine the TDFR, but also used a little bit of this kind of perspective. Lasha Bakradze makes the point there as well that even the main representatives of the Committee of Georgia's Independence had in their mind visions about a Transcaucasian federation, but they saw it as not viable. But from the German perspective, even they envisaged at some point in the future a Caucasian bloc, where Georgia would be sort of the main actor in this kind of arrangement. Now, Beka Kobahidze, who is also here today, he looks at the perspectives of the allies and more particularly focus on Britain, which was also much more involved. And he points out to Britain being initially distanced, but the fact that Britain also drew lessons, and there were also, Beka looks at key figures of British figures, English figures who were quite familiar with the Georgian context, and them having had these problems, these ideas for a federative sort of framework for Georgia and for the region. That afterwards, sort of with the collapse of the TDFR and also with the emergence of the republics, the Brits were advocating this framework to the independent states. And Tim also focuses on the sort of the Bolsheviks, and particularly Stepan Shaumian's perspective on this particular period, and also on TDFR, and the fact that the Bolsheviks saw this as a separatist movement from Russia, and they were keen to undermine it, and that then yet Shaumian had his own kind of readings of how the region should be organized, and team is advancing also the argument that this actually the TDFR had an impact on how they reframed, how the Bolsheviks reframed their nationality policy on the region. Then the last two contributions are one by again Tim and Thomas, who is a colleague here at Charles University, and they looked at the sort of Ukrainian perspective on the TDFR. So the last two contributions are more the sort of the small entities around the TDFR. So the argument there is that the Ukraine War Theater and the Caucasus War Theater were sort of undergoing similar processes, but the Ukrainians were aware, and there were some interactions, but increasingly they were aware of the TDR's weaknesses, and they were indifferent to help them, particularly in the sort of the war front. And Sarah's contribution was looking at the North Caucasus, and more particularly at the mountainous government, the Gortsis, and it's very insightful there to see how tuned they were to federalism. So I think it was 3 weeks ago when Sarah presented her own PhD thesis research, her ongoing research, and she had this dichotomy of centralism, decentralism, and the fact was that this federative input was there, and they the Gortsi government they found the TDFR actually as a viable framework for them to be involved with, and so that's sort of the argument that is there. So to conclude, a couple of points. Not to miss an opportunity to mark a historical anniversary. It's the suggestion, so it could lead to an interesting volume, a special issue, and I think this special issue is an interesting one for people to read and study more, and also add more in future research. There are interesting figures and ideas furthermore to be explored. The special issue as a process, of course, in the practicalities, you need to oversee it properly and keep the people in sort of check whether they're keeping the deadlines and sort of responding to the criticism from the feedback. But I found it smooth and rewarding. Moreover, it was a fruitful process of collaboration with the contributors who were working on the region, and in a way, it was very, I think, a new approach as to analyzing the region's historical and historiographical complexities. And finally, I think, and I'm convinced of this, that the special issue does offer a systematic and multi-perspectival study of the TDFR per se, but also on the concept of federation and federalism as a key political concept of modern history of the Caucasus. So thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. So we can move on to the questions section. If anybody in the Zoom chat would like to ask a question, I guess you can either raise your hand or let us know, or write question in chat. And I guess Nico will also let us know if we have any questions coming in from the Ilia Facebook live feed. So maybe I can start and I was involved in this process as well, and I have maybe my own answers to this, but maybe I can ask you first of all, why would you choose to do a special edition as opposed to either going out on your own and just getting your article published in the most prestigious journal possible, or going first to a book publisher? Like, what was your thinking? Why do a journal special edition as opposed to going straight for a book?
Thank you, Tim. I think I mentioned this a little bit at the very beginning of the lecture, namely that I initially thought that this would work much better as a book. I like books more than the sort of in general the special issues, but the idea there was that, well, basically we agreed when we had the end of the conference to go for a special issue because it has a much more sort of, it comes out quicker as a product for the scholars and for people who are interested on the issue, and because book might take a bit longer, even though this was more or less a two-year process, so I don't know to what extent, but we are also lucky because the Caucasus Survey offers this, or allows the format, since it's also aligned with Routledge. They allow for publishing the special issues afterwards as a book. So this is the next step actually of the special issue. In that regard, we can see this as a work in progress as well, because we have to prepare this small book form application to turn it into a book. So that will happen soon. So in a sense, we are lucky to have it as a special issue initially, and then turn it into a book, hopefully for a wider audience. The second point that you say, why don't you publish it on your own and also sort of in prestigious places. I think I like the idea that this would be published in Caucasus Survey very much so, because this is actually targeting very much so the area of that covers the Caucasus. And so it's much more rewarding, because what we want is for people who are really interested on the region to see it first, as opposed to the prestigious ones that it might trickle down economics at some point. And the other part of your question is that actually collaborative work, I find it much more rewarding. I mean, this is in a way we brought together so many bright and hardworking people who work on the region, and maybe it's a sort of a good example of how other topics can be explored as well. So to bring somebody who works on Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, and North Caucasus as well, and then have all this great powers perspective, and also Ukraine and as I said, Northern Caucasus. This was a sort of a wonderful opportunity, and again, I would have been able to maybe explore some of the archives, but I would not have been able to explore so many archives and be so this is really much rewarding.
I think too, as you mentioned, Caucasus Survey is kind of a new journal, a young journal. Gives it a kind of flexibility, and I think we were really lucky that the editor, Lawrence Brouwers, was really enthusiastic.
Exactly, and he remained enthusiastic throughout. So.
Yeah, so with all the problems, and I think I mean that's true of Lawrence, but I get that sense more generally with special editions, that journal editors have a lot to do. A lot is expected of them.
Yes.
And with a special edition, you're sort of getting that extra help that you have. The editor or editors who are coming in with the special edition are going to be doing a lot of the the editing, but also bringing up names of potential reviewers, for example, that the articles can be sent to. So it's sort of taking some of the busy work that otherwise.
Yeah, I was so much surprised that it went rather smooth. I mean, there was not much of a complication in any regard. So that's.
Well, we have a question in the Zoom chat from Manukar Shiva, who asks, this is a question that's actually come up before. I don't think it came up at the conference, but I've spoken with Sarah quite a lot about this. So is anybody working on the 1918 pandemic in the region and its effects on political events? And I assume he means the Hispanca, the Spanish flu.
Well, that could be now a new project, because completely out of that, it didn't come across to discuss that at that point, and now of course it becomes. But no, the answer is no. We haven't worked on this, and I don't know what you and Sarah discussed. Maybe you can.
Yeah, well, we discussed this, just the fact that it doesn't really seem to resonate so much, and I think one of the reasons is that there were so many ways to die in 1918
yes.
that nobody really noticed. I mean, there was so much typhoid, there was so much cholera that simply this other way of dying might not have really shown up. And I've looked into this a little bit, into the literature on the Russian Revolution and the Civil War, and about casualty rates for the Spanish flu. And there's really not a lot of numbers. And it's really for that reason, that there was so much other causes of death going around that it really sort of got under. It's very possible that there were much more cases in the entire Russian Empire that would contribute to the overall number throughout the world, but just that they weren't noticed, weren't counted in that way. Sarah has, since our discussion, which began actually just before the whole outbreak, we were talking about this. I think we were on our way to the Russian Revolutionary study group of the Russian Revolution conference back in January and talking about this. And since then, every time she comes across an article in one of the newspapers from the North Caucasus at the time about cholera, about any form of disease, she sends it to me. But so far, I don't think any of those have been about particularly the Spanish flu. But it is an interesting topic. And
it is.
Maybe there are better sources somewhere. And it's also, I would say something else that's interesting too is that it doesn't figure in local historiography either.
Yes, that's precisely.
A few years ago, there was a summer school on the First Republic. There were actually two, but this is the first summer school on the Russian Republic that was held by the National Archive back in 2015. And so they had some of the best known Georgian historians who were working on the early period and on the Democratic Republic. And I asked one of them, and he was Dmitry Shvelidze, about this, and he'd never heard of it. And he was completely unaware that there was this. And it was, as anybody will tell you who studies the period more generally, it was more people died in the Spanish flu than the entire war.
Also the context, for instance, in the Balkans as well, which is sort of an area that I'm familiar with from the historiography. It's also, there's not mentioned. I mean, there's not much a talk about the Spanish flu. There's lots of wars and killings there going on as well. People are dying, as you put it, from different reasons. But no, yeah.
Okay, well, do we have any other questions, either from our participants in the Zoom session or coming in from the live feed?
Tim, so far we don't have any, but if I may reflect on this flu thing in 1918, if I may. So yeah, I remember that moment. It was 2013, not 15, 2013. I was also the organizer of this first summer school. Yeah, I mean, you don't see it. You don't see it in any Georgian book, I would say, or in any book related to the Georgian history. Neither I have seen it on Azerbaijani or Armenian history books. But since we have situation here, when you are reading articles from the previous times, that you become more observant, let's say. And now I see in Georgian newspapers that people die from Hispanca. But it wasn't, let's say, it wasn't an issue in the First Republics, let's say, because primarily you are right that there were so many ways to die at that time, that it was something like something aside, you know, another factor, let's say. And, you know, we should take into account that 1915 genocide is a very new thing. And then you have a lot of inflow of Armenian refugees into Georgia, in Yerevan gubernia and elsewhere. And I have seen British accounts how people were living in Yerevan, just dying in the streets, which was not the case in Tbilisi. And it was cholera, it was Spanish flu, it was something else. Nobody could really clarify it. And one more very important thing is, which makes it different, I think, different from our own period, is that spread of information, let's say. Now, their spread of information was very, very limited. Only source was newspaper, and 80% of people in the region were not literate. They were illiterate, actually, and they couldn't acquire information, and circulation of information was very, very slow. And very apart from that, today, individual human is a voter, you know, informed, more or less informed voter. And governments are more obliged to take care of their health and to think of their better future, which was not necessarily the case everywhere in 1918 world. So these are, let's say, major differences in my point of view.
Okay, we have another question from Manukar, which is, we can ask both Pekka and Adrian about this as sort of specialists of the First Republic. So he writes, the republics are usually remembered as the Democratic Republic of Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, but the stamps and the banknotes that I can find on the internet, the term democratic is not mentioned, just the Republic of. Is that the case, and if so, why?
Yes, I have it also in my, I can show it again in the, let me share it.
With the Democratic Republic of Georgia, it certainly mentions democratic.
So here's the stamp, actually, which, so you have Transcaucasian Republic Federative, which is correct. Yes, that's the, this is the stamp of, I found it in the Georgian archives and documents where it's missing. Yes, the democratic.
That wasn't in the international geopolitical sphere. It wasn't such a keyword.
Yes, well, I mean, this was also, if you look at 19th century sort of debates in Britain and United States as well, the term democratic is still a very kind of loose kind of, it hasn't had the meaning, the strong meaning that it got, particularly after the you know, the Second World War. So I mean, this.
And one more point, probably one more point is that you know, in TDRF's time, everything was done so hastily.
Yes.
You know, you may not expect everything to be correct on the paper. You know, even in Democratic Republic of Georgia, we have two declarations of independence. One which was adopted on 26th of May 1918, and you see that this is scrap paper, some sort of, you know, hastily found somewhere, you know, and the people just with their hands put their signatures. And then you have another Declaration of Independence, which was already adopted by the Constituent Assembly in 1919 after elections. And this is very well prepared paper, decorated with the coat of arms on it and with a proper text and everything. So yeah, in Federation's time, you may expect such gaps.
And also, if I may add, the interesting thing about the TDFR is that except for the documents that are around that time, you don't find any artifact that actually sort of symbolizes the TDFR. And the reason why I put this, and we had it also, I had it in the presentation in the conference as well, is that some kind of visual element to the existence of this federation is lacking. So that's why I'm using this stamp that I found in the documents to say that actually it existed as such. It's just as a material evidence that it existed.
And we also have the banknotes, right? That have, I think, the only banknotes in existence that have Georgian, Armenian, and Azerbaijani Turkish in Arabic script on the notes, right? Yeah. And it's kind of remarkable for something that existed for 5 weeks that you had any of this.
Yes.
And a follow-up question from Manukar. So when did we start officially remembering these republics as democratic republics?
Well, Becca might be able to.
Well,
I mean, as they declared themselves right after that, but then they had some events that the first years they were sort of celebrating their independence, and so they could be seen as moments where they recognize themselves as such also. But Beckham would be.
Yeah, I mean, remembering we means probably we as people of modern times. Yeah, but there were celebrations of a-year anniversary, 2-year anniversaries for all the republics marked with various events. But remembering the republics, this is absolutely post-Soviet phenomenon because writing of the republics during the Soviet times, we had remarkable Georgian historian in Soviet times, Ushangi Sidamonidze, maybe some of you have heard about him. He attempted to write things about republics, and he was dismissed from the university. His PhD dissertation failed, and I mean, he was fully blacklisted, let's say. And then, I mean, you have it like not Georgian Democratic Republic in Soviet historiography, but you have Menshevik government, or you have like Menshevik junta, or names like that. So from even before Soviet collapse, so from 1990 after 9th of April, let's say, it was a more liberal approach and people dared to write more. So from 1990, I would say, first memoirs were published from the emigration, and remarkably, Professor Richard Hovhannisyan from UCLA, who is a pioneer in the Republic's historiography, told me that, I mean, he wrote in emigration, it was remembered, of course, all along it was remembered. But Richard tells me that already in 1990, he was allowed in Armenian archives to research the topic. So I would say, I would put it as 1990, but I would recall also one very interesting story about the memories. So during the Republic's times, there was one prominent Georgian poet called Golau Nadiradze, and he, in 1969, wrote a poetry about 25th of February. 25th of February is the occupation day of Georgia, 1921. And I mean, he just smashed Soviet regime and occupation and everything else. And then this handwritten poetry ended up in the Museum of Literature. And they were marking some 60-something years of the communist government in Georgia. And by accident, they didn't read what they were publishing. And in 1985, this poetry was published, and then 13 people were dismissed from their jobs from being ignorant and not attentive. And Nadiradze was already over 90 years old, and he luckily was not arrested. It was already perestroika. But I would put first Nadiradze in Soviet Transcaucasia, who dared to publish something.
But also the memoirs of Jordani as well. I think they were published in Georgian in 1990. Yes,
Yeah. From 1990, it was already okay to publish things. His selected writings also were published at that time. This was Guram Sharadze, Professor Guram Sharadze, who took up he brought a bunch of papers and publications from emigration and published things in Georgia. But much more publications were in emigre Armenian community, because Armenians emigrated en masse, I would say, at least political elites, and they left quite a lot narrative heritage.
Yeah, and so that's the answer to Manuker's follow-up question: how were they remembered by Soviet historians? And the answer is, as Becca said, that the Georgians would be referred to in derogatory tone as Mensheviks, the Armenians as Dashnaks, the Azerbaijanis as Musavatist, and that's it, all in a derogatory sort of term. I think we don't have any more questions. I'd like to ask the sort of maybe the final question, unless anything more comes in, and that's a question to Adrian. And I know we already mentioned that we have to follow up with the book production of this special edition, which is coming up. But can I ask, will you do this again? What is your next project? If you're going to do another special edition, what would you do it around?
I haven't thought of an idea now. My next project is, it will take me at least 2 years now, and I'm working on the concept of national economy building, and it's a comparative project in Czechoslovakia, Georgia, and Albania at the beginning of right after the First World War. So I'm looking at the ideas and some of the institutions that were built to establish viable national economies. And so this project is with Austrian Science Fund. I got it actually the grant at the end of November last year, but since the corona, it hasn't kickstarted. So I'm hopefully I'm hoping that it will start in October. So I'll be also part-time working at University of Vienna, the Department of East European History. So I'm really excited about this, and who knows what kind of projects might come out or ideas might come up from doing that. But for the moment, I don't. But over the last semester, I taught for the first time here at Charles University, taught a course on modern history of the Caucasus, which was very rewarding as well. I had lots of number of students from Scotland and from Norway that really got into so much into the subject. So this has been so far, but hopefully, something might come up. I know you guys, you might be interested as well. So maybe we can think of something together at some point as well. But given the current experience or the last experience, it should be the framework should be fine. But now we have to think of an idea that we can work on.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Adrian, and thank you, Becca, and thank you to all our participants here on Zoom and everybody who is watching, if there are still people watching on the live feed. This is the second to last talk of the spring-summer season this year. We have one more talk next week, which will be Todd Drummond from American Council's Washington, D.C. office, who will be talking about his research on migration and educational attainment in Kyrgyzstan. So watch all the usual places. If you're not a member of the Works in Progress Facebook group, you can get the regular announcements there. If any of you watching are would be interested at some point in giving a talk for this series, for the Works in Progress series, please do let us know. We have a lot of open spots for next year. So thank you to everybody, and we'll see you, everybody, next time.
Thank you very much, Tim. Becca.
See you. Thank you, Tika, for the technical
Thank you very much, Tim, for this event, and thank you both of you guys for organizing this very important publication.
Thank you for